Hey guys, welcome back. By the way, how are you, the audience and fellow fans of A24 horror? Get your ears ready to experience this terrifying film. The latest movie we're going to discuss is titled Undertone 2026. But before that, I suggest you put on your headphones and focus on listening to the story. What for, dude? So it feels even more intense, because a horror film like this clearly won't be very suitable for viewers who prefer action and explosions. Alright, without further ado, let's dive right into it. The story opens with the appearance of a beautiful girl named Evie, who is singing a children's song. Long story short, as midnight approaches, Evie, who works as a radio broadcaster and an online podcast host, begins preparing for her routine. In the midst of these preparations, she looks delighted when reading various positive comments from her listeners. Many say that her podcast truly manages to make them feel frightened while also immersing them in the eerie atmosphere presented. In the middle of her happiness, Evie then contacts her coworker named Justin.
Hello? Hello? Okay, wait a sec.
Just before the broadcast starts, Justin, feeling worried, asks about Evie's mother's condition. Hearing the question, Evie explains that her mother's condition remains the same as it has been for the past year, with no signs of improvement. Hearing that, Justin tries to encourage Evie. He says that caring for a sick parent with sincerity and patience is a noble deed that will be greatly rewarded. After offering some advice, Justin then asks Evie to start the broadcast.
Welcome to another episode of and I'm joined by my co-host and Santa Claus
Where you get your pod.
The reason is, this time they have received a submission from a mysterious source who has a very intriguing story to air and analyze in greater depth. When their radio podcast finally began, Justin opened the discussion by telling a story about a video circulating on the internet that was said to make viewers perform a cardio workout.
Okay, fine.
After seeing the terrifying smile that appeared in it, feeling both curious and amused, Evie immediately played the video so she could watch it herself. Seeing Evie's behavior, Justin could only shake his head in disbelief at her mischievousness. After having her fill of teasing and scaring Justin, Evie then asked her colleague to move on to the main topic and discuss the submission from the mysterious listener they had talked about earlier. Justin then revealed that he had received a strange email containing 10 mysterious audio recording files. When the message was forwarded to Evie, she looked confused after seeing a phrase that read, "Atonement of Sins." Amidst her puzzlement, Justin began playing one of the recordings. He explained that the recording came from a couple named Michael and Jess.
It's still recording!
No, it's not! Let's get some sleep. About 4 hours in.
In the story, Michael felt disturbed because his girlfriend often talked in her sleep. Curious about what was really happening, he decided to record Jess's voice while she was fast asleep. However, on the first recording, the two of them were instead baffled when they heard a children's song that sounded faint, as if it was being sung while walking. Not stopping there, their panic increased when they tried listening more carefully because it seemed like there was a hidden message behind the song.
Justin!
In the midst of his shock, Justin explained that from that song, he heard a sentence that said, "I will kill everyone." At first, this sounded like mere coincidence, especially since the recording seemed like a random, not too convincing prank. However, Justin then revealed a rather horrifying fact. According to him, Many children's songs are believed to contain hidden messages that can only be heard when played in reverse. He even cited the example of London Bridge is Falling Down, which has a dark history. It is said that there is a story claiming several lives were sacrificed to keep London Bridge from collapsing. Hearing this explanation, Evie immediately suggested that the recording be played in reverse to confirm whether there really was a hidden message inside. Feeling up for the challenge, Justin quickly agreed to the request. Although the atmosphere sounded quite eerie, their curiosity turned out to be far greater than the fear that was beginning to emerge. After hearing the strange message allegedly hidden within the song, Justin then recounted the dark history of another children's song. This time he discussed the song Baba Black Sheep, or as he called it, Baba the Black Sheep. According to the story circulating, the song originated from a family of farmers who owned sheep with black wool. In those days, black sheep wool was considered worthless and couldn't be sold. As a result, the family suffered from severe financial difficulties that ultimately led to starvation. The situation became even more tragic because all family members, including their children, eventually died. What was even more horrifying was that the villagers supposedly found the farmer family's corpses had been eaten by their own black sheep, which had also starved during the winter. Although the story sounded terrifying, Evie considered it nothing more than a folk legend that might not necessarily be true. Feeling that the story was still not convincing enough, Evie asked Justin to play the second recording.
Mike.
Water.
However, when the recording began to play, Evie suddenly felt uncomfortable. The sounds coming from the recording seemed as if they were originating from inside her own house. This uneasy feeling grew stronger until, moments later, Evie, who was beginning to feel apprehensive, decided to end the podcast for that day.
Night, Justin.
Good night.
Shortly after the broadcast ended, Evie's attention was immediately drawn to her mother's bedroom light, which suddenly turned on. Feeling puzzled, she immediately approached the room to see what was happening. How could that light turn on by itself when her mother was still in a coma? Not wanting to dwell on it too much, Evie eventually turned off the light and resumed her activities. The next day, Evie, who was starting to experience strange symptoms similar to someone having food cravings, immediately called a doctor to get an examination. She felt it was very likely that her relationship with her boyfriend had resulted in a pregnancy. Hearing this, the doctor explained that the examination could be done the following day. Before ending the call, the doctor also added that a nurse would come to the house that afternoon to check on her mother's condition. When noon arrived, the nurse came and immediately performed the examination. After finishing, she conveyed that Evie's mother's condition was worsening. If this continued, she estimated that her mother might only be able to survive a few more days before finally succumbing to her illness. After delivering the news, the nurse bid farewell and left the house. In the midst of the distress she was feeling, Evie then received a phone call from her boyfriend named Darren. Darren invited her to go out and have some fun that evening. Still worried about her mother's condition, Evie initially tried to decline the invitation. However, Darren said that her comatose mother wasn't going anywhere from her bed. Hearing that rather reasonable-sounding argument, Evie, who loved her boyfriend very much, finally accepted the invitation. Evie bid farewell and left to meet her boyfriend.
I won't be long, okay?
Evie, who departed around 9 in the evening, didn't return home until 6 in the morning. Upon arriving home, she immediately checked on her mother's condition.
Mama!
However, Evie was confused when she found her mother lying on the floor. She kept wondering to herself, how could her mother have gotten there? When the woman couldn't even open her eyes because she was still in a comatose state.
Sorry, Mama.
While still enveloped in confusion, Evie suddenly froze when she saw a statue of a woman with a wide-open mouth that looked terrifying. What made her even more uncomfortable was that the statue appeared to be surrounded by many small figures and was now displayed in her mother's room. Previously, that object had not been there. Not only that, Evie also found a drawing of a horrifying figure that had somehow been stored inside a drawer. Seeing all these strange occurrences piling up, a big question arose in her mind. What on earth had actually happened while she was out of the house last night? Approaching morning, her growing curiosity drove Evie to examine the recording of the song Baba the Black Sheep that had been played in reverse. She began noting down every sentence she managed to hear from the recording.
But
the longer she listened, the more horrifying the hidden messages turned out to be. One part sounded like a command telling the listener to lick blood until it was completely dry. In the middle of her efforts to analyze the recording, Evie suddenly received a phone call from the doctor. The doctor confirmed that she was indeed pregnant, with the pregnancy at around 1.5 months. After delivering this news, the doctor also asked Evie to take better care of her body and pay attention to her health during the pregnancy. Hearing this unexpected news, Evie fell silent immediately. She seemed lost in thought, trying to process all the various things happening in her life all at once. The next day, while the atmosphere in the house was still quiet, Evie suddenly heard the sound of an object falling from the second floor. Although filled with fear and curiosity, she still mustered the courage to check the source of the sound. However, in the midst of her mounting confusion, Evie was once again startled when she discovered that the statue she had previously stored inside a buffet cabinet was now displayed again as before. Feeling that something was wrong, Evie immediately took the statue and hid it inside a closet. Whether there was some other force playing tricks on her, or whether her mother had actually been able to move without her knowledge, she couldn't tell. What was clear, without Evie realizing it, was that there seemed to be an invisible figure secretly watching her from inside that room. That evening, Evie, still curious, tried to find information about the mysterious statue that had suddenly appeared in her mother's room.
I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you.
In the middle of her search, Justin called and invited her to continue the podcast that had been postponed. After all the preparations were complete, they resumed their broadcast as usual. This time, Justin immediately played the fourth recording from the collection of mysterious files they had received. In that recording, a conversation could be heard between Jess and Michael as they were tidying up the nursery. From their chat, it was revealed that Jess was actually pregnant. That news was certainly something joyful for the couple. However, that warm atmosphere didn't last long. Moments later, they suddenly felt horrified when they heard a strange sound accompanied by loud thumping coming from inside their house.
What is that?
Hearing the content of that recording, Evie felt increasingly uncomfortable. Even so, her curiosity drove her to ask Justin to continue and play the next recording.
Babe, are you alright?
When the fifth recording was played, Jess's voice could be heard uttering strange sentences resembling a chant. Not long after, she admitted to feeling a foreign aura that seemed to command her to do something inside her house. This increasingly terrifying story began to put considerable psychological pressure on Evie. Compounded by the various strange events she kept experiencing at home, her mood became more and more unstable. Feeling exhausted both physically and mentally, Evie finally decided to end the podcast early that night. After the broadcast ended, she checked on her mother's condition again. But Evie could only stand frozen when she saw that the night light in her mother's room was once again showing an inexplicable strangeness. Without her realizing it, the mysterious figure that had only appeared through various signs was slowly beginning to reveal its presence. As time passed, that terrifying shadow seemed to grow clearer and closer. Evie tried to dig deeper into the content of the fourth recording she had heard the previous night. To get a clearer sound, she loaded the recording into an audio processing software. After several parts of the audio were enhanced, Evie faintly heard a strange sentence that hadn't been clear before. The content of the recording told the story of a figure named Abizu. According to the story heard in the recording, Abizu was described as a woman who lived during the time of King Solomon. She was depicted as a mother who came from ordinary human background. However, due to an overwhelming and uncontrollable jealousy, Abizu then committed extremely cruel acts. She was said to often sneak into people's homes and kill the innocent babies of her neighbors. This horrifying event eventually spread widely and caused an uproar in society at the time, until finally, King Solomon, who was known in that era as a very powerful ruler, stepped in to judge her actions and sentenced her to death. However, the story in the recording didn't stop there. It was recounted that before her death, Abizu made a pact with the king of demons. From that moment on, she transformed into a demonic figure who continuously terrorized pregnant women and attempted to cause miscarriages. The recording also mentioned that some people believe Abizu's spirit can inhabit certain statues scattered across various regions, including in Southeast Asia. Hearing that explanation, Evie couldn't hide her discomfort, especially since the story had quite disturbingly similarities to the various strange events happening in her house. Not long after, Justin added another piece of information that was no less terrifying. According to a story he had heard, there was once a woman who became so obsessed with and worshipped that statue.
Bags for my doll?
No, why? She'll survive one night.
In the next recording, Michael, who had woken from his sleep, immediately panicked upon hearing the sound of a baby crying inside his house. Listening to that recording made Evie also imagine the terror experienced by Jess and Michael as the horror in their home grew increasingly intense. In the recording, Jess revealed that she had seen a figure of an old woman drowning a baby in the sink. With a trembling voice, she kept asking what exactly she had just witnessed. Hearing Jess's horrifying confession, Evie grew even more curious and immediately asked Justin to play the following recording.
Mike, no, don't leave me here!
Run for the black sheep, have you any wool? Yeah.
next recording, Jess, still overcome with fear, told Michael that she had once again seen a terrifying figure watching her from within the darkness. The figure just stood silently while lurking, making the atmosphere feel even more chilling. After the recording ended, Justin then shared the information he had managed to find. He admitted to having read a news story about a mother who drowned her own baby in the sink after believed to have been influenced by the demonic figure of Abazu. This discovery made Justin feel that something was wrong with the entire series of recordings they had been listening to. Because of that, he decided to end that night's broadcast and continue discussing the next recording on the following night. After the podcast ended, Evie immediately headed to her mother's room to check on her condition. With her eyes starting to well up, she tried to share the news of her pregnancy with her mother, who still lay unconscious. But as before, the atmosphere turned strange again when the light inside the closet suddenly turned on by itself. That sight once again made Evie's hair stand on end. Long story short, as the night grew later and Evie prepared to sleep, she, suffering from insomnia, tried to calm herself by listening to an ASMR audio. The gentle sound from the audio slowly filled the silence of the night.
Rising twirl, dancing penance, weeping here to the surface, the bobbling twirl and the tickle there. A gentle.
Because she fell asleep without having a chance to pray, Evie instead experienced a nightmare that felt incredibly real. In her sleep, various terrifying images appeared one after another, making her feel trapped inside that dream. Moments later, Evie suddenly woke up, but she was soon confused when she heard a faint voice coming from the direction of her mother's room. That voice sounded like someone speaking softly or mumbling quietly in the silence of the night. As the atmosphere inside the house began to feel increasingly unnatural, Evie slowly realized that the terror which had only appeared through recordings and various strange signs now seemed to be revealing itself directly. Evie, thinking that she was merely being tricked by her own senses, tried to wake her mother. However, right after Evie left that room, something tragic occurred. Without her realizing it, her mother had taken her last breath. Long story short, at 2:30 in the early morning, Evie and Justin prepared once again to continue their podcast. While scribbling randomly on a piece of paper with no clear purpose, Evie also got ready to play the last 2 remaining recordings. This time, they even invited listeners to participate directly during the broadcast. But before the podcast began, Evie expressed her doubts about the entire story contained in those recordings. In her opinion, what Jess and Michael experienced could very well be just a gimmick deliberately created to scare people. Besides, they had never actually seen what happened inside the couple's house. They had only heard it through audio recordings. After a brief debate about this, Justin finally played the 9th recording.
A shadow. And the shadow. I don't feel good. Shadow started praying too.
In that recording, Jess's voice sounded very different from before. She seemed to have lost control of herself and spoke in an unnatural way, as if she was under the influence of something. After the recording finished playing, they received a phone call from a podcast listener named Jack. Jack claimed to know Jess and Michael because they were his own neighbors. He then revealed the shocking fact that a few months earlier, the couple had been found dead in a very gruesome condition. According to his account, when the police conducted an investigation at their home, they found many terrifying drawings covering the walls of that house. After the phone call ended, Evie responded to that story with a small laugh. In her view, Jack's testimony sounded too exaggerated and hard to believe. Nevertheless, her curiosity drove her to ask Justin, who was starting to look frightened, to continue and play the final recording.
You're burning up. We have to get
I
out of
have
here.
to warn her.
No.
Justin, I'm so cool.
She said my name.
In the midst of the increasingly strange atmosphere, they received another phone call from a different listener. In a panicked tone, that listener warned them that they should not play all the recordings through to the very last one. According to him, that series of recordings was not just ordinary documentation. He even claimed that after the final recording was played, the demonic figure of Abazu would actually come. Without her realizing it, the random scribbles she had been making on the paper had slowly formed the figure of Abazu, exactly the same as the terrifying drawing she had once found inside her mother's bedroom drawer. At that moment, Evie began to realize that perhaps all the events she had considered coincidences all this time were actually connected in a far more horrifying way than she had ever imagined. And now, the most terrifying thing finally truly happened to Evie. Oh my, how shocked Evie was when the various signs of Abazu's appearance began to manifest more and more clearly before her. It turned out that the demonic figure had possessed her mother's deceased body. With her mother's body as a new vessel, Abazu came to eliminate Evie and the baby she was carrying. What? Still confused? Don't worry, I'll explain briefly. This whole calamity began when Evie and Justin broadcast the mysterious recordings they had received. Without realizing it, those recordings actually contained fragments of incantations related to summoning Abazu. At the same time, Evie's pregnant condition made her the primary target for this figure. A pregnancy that should have been joyful news instead made her the perfect target for the terror that had been building since the beginning of the story. In the end, Abazu, believed to dwell within the statue of Saint Rita, began to transfer into the body of Evie's mother, who had unknowingly passed away. After obtaining a new vessel, the demonic figure then hunted Evie and the baby in her womb. From this point, the entire series of terrors that had been slowly built from the beginning reached its climax. What remains a mystery until the end of the film is the identity of the person who sent those 10 terrifying recordings to Justin. This movie never provides a definitive answer as to who was behind all these events. I suppose that's enough for the review and discussion of the film Undertone. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss other interesting videos. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Bye bye.